Carl McCunn, an affable Texan with a love for the outdoors, moved to Alaska in the late 1970s. He took a trucking job on the Trans-Alaska Pipeline where he made good money, fast friends, and concocted an adventure that still stirs bewilderment in the 49th state. At the age of 35, he embarked on a 5-month photography expedition in the wild. Friends describe how he prepared for the quest. He devoted a year to plan making and detail checking. He solicited advice and purchased supplies. And then in March of 1981, he hired a bush pilot to drop him at a remote lake near the Colleen River, some 70 miles northeast of Fort Yukon. He took 2 rifles, a shotgun, 1,400 pounds of provisions, and 500 rolls of film. He set up his tent and set about his season of isolation, blissfully unaware of an overlooked detail that would cost him his life. He had made no arrangement to be picked up. His unbelievable blunder didn't dawn on him until August. We know this because of a 100-page loose-leaf diary that the Alaska State Troopers found near his body the following February. In an understatement the size of Mount McKinley, McCunn wrote the words, "I think I should have used more foresight about arranging my departure." As the days shortened and the air chilled, he began searching the ground for food and the skies for rescue. He was running low on ammunition and hiking out was impossible. He had no solution but to hope that someone in the city would notice his absence. By the end of September, the snow was piling and the lake was frozen and supplies were nearly gone. His body fat began to metabolize, making it more difficult to stay warm. Temperatures hovered around 0. Frostbite began to attack his fingers and toes. By late November, McCunn was out of food, strength, and optimism. One of his final diary entries reads, "This sure is a slow and agonizing way to die." Isolated with no rescue, trapped with no exit, nothing to do but wait for the end. Chilling and puzzling. Why no exit strategy? Didn't he know that every trip comes to an end? It's not like his excursion would last forever. Ours won't. This heart will feel a final pulse. These lungs will empty a final breath. This tongue will speak a final word. Barring the return of Christ, I will die, so will you. But unlike Carl McCunn, we have an exit strategy. And we find it in the resurrection of Jesus. Do you remember the resurrection announcement? He is not here. He has risen from the dead as he said he would. It was Sunday morning after the Friday execution. Jesus' final breath had sucked the air out of the universe. As his body seemed to be a moldering in the grave, no one was placing bets on a resurrection. His enemies were satisfied with their work. The spear to his side guaranteed his demise. His tongue was silenced. His last deed was done. They raised a toast to a dead Jesus. Their only concern was those pesky disciples. The religious leaders made this request of Pilate. "So give the order for the tomb to be made secure until the 3rd day. Otherwise his disciples may come and steal the body and tell the people that he has been raised from the dead." No concern was necessary. The disciples were at meltdown. When Jesus was arrested, all the disciples forsook him and fled. Peter followed from a distance, but caved in and cursed Christ. John watched Jesus die, but we have no record that John gave any thought to ever seeing him again. The other followers didn't even linger. They cowered in Jerusalem's cupboards and corners for fear of the cross that bore their names. No one dreamed of a Sunday morning miracle. Peter didn't ask John, "What will you say when you see Jesus?" Mary didn't ponder, "How will he appear?" They didn't encourage each other with quotes of his promised return. They could have. At least 4 times, Jesus had said words like these: "The Son of Man is being betrayed into the hands of men, and they will kill him. And after he is killed, he will rise on the 3rd day." You'd think someone would mention this prophecy and do the math. He died yesterday. Today's the 2nd day. He promised to rise on the 3rd day. Tomorrow is the 3rd day. Friends, I think we better wake up early tomorrow. But Saturday saw no such plans. On Saturday, the enemy had won. Courage was gone, and hope caught the last train to the coast. They planned to embalm Jesus, not talk to him. Here's what the scripture says. When the Sabbath was over, Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James, and Salome brought spices so they might go to anoint Jesus' body. Very early on the 1st day of the week, just after sunrise, they were on their way to the tomb, and they asked each other, "Who will roll the stone away from the entrance of the tomb?" Easter parade? Victory march? Hardly. More like a funeral procession. It may have been Sunday morning, but their world was stuck on Saturday. It was left to the angel to lead them into Sunday. Here's what happened. There was a violent earthquake, for an angel of the Lord came down from heaven and, going to the tomb, rolled back the stone and sat on it. His appearance was like lightning, and his clothes were white as snow. The guards were so afraid of him that they shook and became like dead men. The angel said to the women, "Do not be afraid, for I know that you are looking for Jesus who was crucified. He is not here. He has risen, just as he said. Come and see the place where he lay." He has risen. 3 words in English, just 1 word in Greek, egerthe. So much rests on the validity of this one word. If it is false, then the whole of Christianity collapses like a poorly told joke. Yet, if it is true, then God's story has turned your final chapter into a preface. If the angel was correct, then you can believe this. Jesus descended into the coldest cell of death's prison and allowed the warden to lock the door and smelt the keys in a furnace. And just when the demons began to dance and prance, Jesus pressed pierced hands against the inner wall of the cavern, and from deep within he shook the cemetery. The ground rumbled and the tombstones tumbled, and out he marched, the cadaver-turned king with the mask of death in one hand and the keys of heaven in the other. Egerthe, he has risen. Not risen from sleep, not risen from confusion, not risen from stupor or slumber, not spiritually raised from the dead, but physically raised. The women and disciples didn't see a phantom or experience a sentiment. They saw Jesus in the flesh. "It is I myself," he assured them. The Emmaus-bound disciples thought Jesus was a fellow pilgrim. His feet touched the ground, his hands touched the bread. Mary mistook him for a gardener. Thomas studied his wounds. The disciples ate fish that he cooked. The resurrected Christ did physical things in a physical body. "I'm not a ghost," he explained. "Handle me and see. For a spirit does not have flesh and bones, as you see I have." The bodily resurrection means everything. You see, if Jesus lives on merely in spirit and deeds, he's but one of 1,000 dead heroes. But if he lives on in flesh and bone, he is the king who pressed his heel against the head of death. And what he did with his own grave, he promises to do with yours. Empty it. Death is not the final chapter in your story. In death, you will step into the arms of the one who declared, "I am the resurrection and the life, and he who believes in me will live, even though he dies. And whoever lives and believes in me will never die. Winston Churchill believed this. The Prime Minister planned his own funeral. According to his instructions, 2 buglers were positioned high in the dome of St. Paul's Cathedral. At the conclusion of the service, the first one played taps, the signal of a day completed. Immediately thereafter, with the sounds of the first song still ringing in the air, the second bugler played Reveille, the song of a day begun. Appropriate song. You see, death is no pit, but a passageway, not a crisis, but a corner turn. Dominion of the grim reaper? No. Territory of the soul keeper, who will someday announce, your dead will live, your corpses will get to their feet. All you dead and buried, wake up and sing. Your dew is morning dew, catching the first rays of sun, and the earth bursting with life, giving birth to the dead. So play on, bugler, play on.